When we think of Irish food history, one image dominates everything: the potato.
Irish.
Potato.
What is Irish cuisine?
The potato has become a symbol, a stereotype, and for millions of Irish people across generations, it is a memory of trauma. But the Irish famine isn't just a story about a failed crop. It's a story about colonialism, economic transformation, and the global Irish diaspora. The Great Famine was not the result of a lacking food culture, but the outcome of British colonial food systems that shaped Ireland before the Blight and long after it. It transformed Ireland from a potato-based rural society into an exporter of cattle and dairy, and it carried food trauma across oceans into the Irish diaspora. Before the Blight even arrived in 1845, British rule had already shaped Ireland into a food exporting colony. Ireland grew wheat, oats, cattle, and butter, but most of it did not go to Irish tables. They went east to England. Historian Dean Braw argues that the famine was not simply a natural disaster. It was the product of colonial policy. This system forced the rural poor to rely almost entirely on potatoes. This created a system where one failed crop could collapse an entire society. In 1847, an Irish mechanic wrote in The Liberator about how harsh the conditions were and how many were dying. He explains that there was no good seed to put in the ground. After the famine, Ireland didn't rebuild the system that it had before. It created a new one. It was one shaped by market forces, export demand, and centuries of colonial economics. The famine accelerated a shift that was already underway. Ireland moved from tillage to pasture, from potatoes and grain to cattle, butter, and beef. Historian Frank Armstrong argues that since the 17th century, Ireland's land has been used as a resource to be exploited rather than as a space for developing a national cuisine. Because so much of Irish produce was grown for export, there was little room for alternative agriculture or culinary experimentation. This stunted Ireland, and they didn't develop what other European countries did, an elaborate, diverse food culture. By the early 1800s, Ireland supplied most of England's food imports, yet Irish people themselves lived on tenant plots and ate almost nothing but potatoes. After the famine, that relationship only deepened. Cattle and dairy were not just food, they were economic survival. Ireland's agricultural identity became commercial, not culinary. The famine created one of the largest population movements in European history. As historian Enda Delaney explains, migration didn't start with the famine, but the famine made it central to the Irish story. The Irish diaspora became not only a physical movement, but a cultural and emotional one. Unlike many immigrant groups, the Irish did not recreate a distinctive national cuisine in America or Britain. Irish immigrants rarely talked about or celebrated food. Irish dishes also did not develop into strong community traditions abroad. Other immigrant groups, such as Italian, Jewish, and Chinese immigrants, built entire identities around their cuisines, but the Irish did not. This has made many Irish people question what Ireland's food and population could look like today if this had not happened.
It's the kind of thing where you're sitting thinking, if that hadn't happened, how many people would be living in Ireland? What would Ireland be like now?
But the story does not end with loss. Ireland today is experiencing a food renaissance, and people traveling to the country are noticing.
That was a very pleasant surprise, was how good the food was. I really wasn't expecting that much as far as the foodie scene. I haven't heard that much about the scene here in Dublin or throughout Ireland. I was kind of just expecting a lot of burgers and pub food, and while of course there is plenty of that, I was surprised by the variety of food and how many healthy options there were as well. So
Irish food also still features the potato in a lot of its dishes.
But one thing I've seen a lot since I came to this beautiful country is, of course, spuds or potatoes. I knew that Irish people really like potatoes, but what I didn't expect that they know so many ways to cook them and that you can have a lot of different types on one plate as well. Mashed potato, chips, boiled potatoes, cheesy potatoes, garlic potatoes, roasted potatoes, and so on and so on.
Historian Martin Mac Con Iamere explains how Irish chefs are embracing local, sustainable, simple cuisine instead of French haute cuisine. They are shifting away from the export economy of the past and towards something rooted in place and pride. Historian Martin Mac Iamere writes that this shift reflects a young, confident nation, moving beyond its image as the land of the potatoes, and redefining its food identity for the 21st century. Ireland is finally reclaiming the culinary experimentation and cultural pride that colonialism, famine, and export economics once suppressed. The Irish famine was not just a natural disaster. It was the breaking point of a colonial food system, one that shaped Ireland long before the Blight and long after it. It reshaped Ireland in three major ways. The first was colonial food systems. British rule turned Ireland into an export economy, leaving the poor dependent on a single crop. The second was agricultural transformation. After the famine, Ireland became a cattle and dairy nation, prioritizing export over local diversity. The third was diaspora and memory. Irish immigrants carried food trauma abroad, shaping how Irish cuisine, or its absence, developed globally. Today, Ireland is rebuilding its food identity. It's turning a history of scarcity and exploitation into a future of creativity and pride. Irish food is no longer defined by potatoes or by famine. It's defined by resilience.